Welcome to the Journey Home podcast, where we explore the remarkable paths of ordinary people who have triumphed through life's storms to find unwavering faith and a profound sense of meaning. Through intimate interviews, we dive deep, revealing the unfiltered truths of their journey. Together, we'll explore faith's transformative power, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unshakable truth that no matter how far we may stray, we are all on our journey home. Welcome back to the Journey Home podcast. I am so excited to be here today with you guys. We have Kasey and Kelly Noe joining us today. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, this is a long time coming. I remember when I first decided to start a podcast and I reached out to you guys and I was like, will you be on it? Please, please, please. And it just feels like all the stars are aligning right now to have both of you guys here. You look absolutely gorgeous. Like, you guys are goddesses. It's insane to witness. And it's just an honor to be here. So I want to hear all about you guys. I want our listeners to hear all about you guys. And I wanted to take it all the way back to what it was like growing up as sisters. I have a brother. I always wanted a sister. And I'm just so intrigued by those dynamics. And I just wanted to kick it off with, what were you guys like from the very beginning?
Yeah, well, first, I guess thank you for having us.
Yeah.
We're definitely very honored to be here. I'm going to let Kelly kind of take the ropes on our beginnings.
Well, you've got the memory.
Oh, gosh, I do. It's a blessing and a curse.
It's already starting. I'm already seeing the dynamics.
Oh, my gosh. So, I would have to say that our childhood growing up was a rocky start for sure. There was a lot of competition between the two of us. And then we went off to college and we both went to ECU. And I feel like that's when we kind of like put down the guns and we're like, okay, let's become friends. But yeah, I mean, I guess really just diving into stories of our childhood. What is your favorite memory?
Probably riding you around like a horse.
Kelly was really into horses.
I was a horse girl.
She was a horse girl.
I'm actually shocked right now.
I was a horse girl?
Yeah, I am surprised by that, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. I don't know Kelly other than anything but a horse girl.
Yeah.
A horse girl and a hair girl.
I love that. Yeah, the hair makes sense, but horse girl, okay.
And Kasey was the best Barbie doll there ever was.
Oh, the best hair.
Yeah. And I would be like, let's dye your hair purple today, and get on my bike and like ride up to the grocery store, which was probably like 3 miles up the road.
It was not close.
It was not
You
safe.
were both on one bike?
No, just me. I'd be like, I'll be right back, and go up to the store, get a box of dye, come back, do half of her hair because it's so thick, and I'd be like, shoot, I gotta go and get another box.
How old were you?
Middle
10?
Oh, yeah.
11,
well,
12?
I would
Middle
say like
school.
6th grade.
Okay, and how old were you?
Like 5th, 4th, I don't know. It's honestly as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, and how did you fry her hair off ever?
No, it was always like a deposit like color, so it was like a purple or a black or whatever, and whatever was left over, the dog would get the rest of it, like his ears, his tail.
But my mom, she thought my hair was going to fall off. She was like, Kelly, you have to stop dyeing your sister's hair. Like, it is going to fall out. And just before we were on here, we were talking about how our voices sound alike. So my mom would be at work. She'd call the house to check on us. And she'd be like, okay, what are you guys doing? I'd be like, oh, nothing. We're just hanging out. And Kelly would be, on her bike on the way to the grocery store. And she'd be like, okay, let me talk to Kelly. I'd be like, okay, hang on. And like pretend I was walking. And then I'd be like, hello. And like pretend to be her. And she'd be like, okay, just making sure you're there.
And it worked. Like, she believed y'all.
Every time.
That is ridiculous. So what's y'all's age gap?
2 years.
So you guys are so close.
22 months.
That is so much fun. Okay, so for the hair dyeing incident, was there ever a time where you were like stressed out, thought that, like, also, where did you even learn how to do this?
There was no internet.
No, yeah, it just came about naturally.
So at a young age, you decided, I want to do hair. This is what I want to do. Was there ever like a, oh my goodness, I've ruined everything moment?
No.
Wow. That is so impressive.
Even when the Barbies were bald, she didn't care. My mom was like, they can't go any shorter.
That is so you would cut the Barbie's hair too.
Yeah,
Anything-
everyone's hair. And then I would
anything
move,
with
like
hair.
the neighbors, the neighborhood kids.
I love this.
So this was also like in sync era.
Oh, yes.
Every boy in the neighborhood had frosted tips.
Because of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at what you did for everyone. So when you guys got to ECU, you were there together. What was that experience like? Like, what was college like together? Did you guys hang out, have the same friends, totally different lives?
I mean, periodically we would see
Yeah.
each other at parties.
Yeah, not even
And-
just at parties. It was like Kelly felt like home for me.
Yeah.
And so she was in a house, I was in the dorm, but it was like walking distance,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
So if I wanted to get to Kelly, I could get there easily and, you know, have dinner with her, be with her and her roommates. And, you know, Lauren was always with her, who's still always with her now. And so she's like
Yeah.
a sister to me too.
Yeah.
And I just felt like all of our competition just between each other completely washed away in college.
I think it was like something about being like away from home and like, yeah, we were each other's home.
I love that.
That was the best
But
thing for
oddly
us.
enough,
Yeah.
so after college, many years later, I guess it was like almost 10 years ago now, we both moved back in with our parents. Kelly was about to buy a house, and I had ended a relationship to move back from another state, and we were both back with our parents. And it was such a surreal experience, but looking back on it now, it was actually like one of my favorite like most epic times together as sisters. It felt like we got to like redo our childhood.
That's so special. How old were you guys during that time?
25,
Yeah.
28.
I moved back home around that time. Like Troy was up in New York. I was supposed to go with him, and then everything fell through. I didn't have anywhere to live, so I just moved back home. And like similar to what you guys were saying, it's almost like a reclaiming of being in that space together. And so all four of you guys were back together in that space. For how long?
2 years?
No,
like-
not that
Yeah,
long.
like a year and a half.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half.
And then what separated? Like, where did you go? Where did you go?
Well, when Kelly bought a house, I was like, I'm moving in with you. So, of course, when she was house shopping, I was like, okay, well, this will be my room.
Is that the house that you're in?
Yes.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And then when did you go to California?
It was quite the journey for us to get there. So I met Kevin when we were both living at home, and I will never forget when we loaded up the RV and we were pulling away from Kelly's house, and Kelly and I are both crying, and Kevin was like, am I like taking you away from
Your life?
yeah, is this going to be the worst thing ever? But Kevin and I ended up going to Arizona, and then we went to California, lived our California dream, and then obviously the catalyst of events brought me back home.
Yes. Do we want to go into that?
Sure.
Okay, let's see where we're at with time. Okay, yes, we have plenty of time. So I actually met Kelly through Jazzercise, which is so funny to even think about. I don't even know how I found out about it because it was like this hole in the wall, middle of nowhere, Wilmington place. And I showed up, and there was this larger than life, beautiful woman. And she was teaching the classes and had all this personality. And I was like, that's the kind of person I want to be. And it ended up being y'all's mother. So I went to her beautiful home, and she sat me down, and she was like, I'm just going to tell you flat out, like, Jazzercise is not what pays the bills. Like, when you look around this house, it is not from that. So unless you're looking to do this as a passion project, like, I suggest you think of something else. And she was saying that because in that moment, I was looking for my career path. And as I was coming to take classes, I remember this other beautiful woman walking in, and it was Kelly. And she would like sashay around, and you knew all the dances, but you were like so laissez-faire about it. Like you would wait a few beats to learn it, and then you would like do the whole dance. And so I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. And I would like kind of just copied everything you did. And then flash forward a couple years, I ended up opening my own yoga studio because after your mom terrified me about Jazzercise, I was like, okay, I'll go get yoga certified. And then I opened a studio a couple years later, and Kelly came and did the training. And it wasn't until she walked in and I was like, you're just so familiar to me that we made the association that I know your mom. Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe we chat a little bit about your mom and her love for Jazzercise and all of that, if you guys are down for that.
Oh Oh, jazzercise.
My mom was like always moving, like when she was driving the car, when she was cooking, when she was sitting at her computer, like always doing a routine, always learning the routines. Like, oh, this is a jazzercise song.
If I have a routine to this, I have a routine.
Trying to get all of our boyfriends that would come over. She'd be like, dance, do this routine with me. And if he would, she'd be like,
he's in. Mm-hmm. And then I have one friend, her name is Elizabeth, and she knew the way to my mom's heart was jazzercise. So she'd come over to the house and she'd be like, hey, Terry, do you have any new routines you want to show me? Oh, boy.
Over.
Did she ever?
Like 45 minutes
I
later.
mean, most nights turned into a jazzercise thing, like in the kitchen.
Oh,
all
absolutely.
of us.
Yeah.
The whole party.
Yeah.
Where was your dad with all this? Was he doing it?
Oh, no.
No, never.
Oh, no. In fact, I feel like the first time that I saw my dad dance was at her.
Funeral.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
The very last song, we're like, come on, get on up. And I watched him dance, and I was like, I have never seen this before.
Yeah.
It was
That's
amazing.
He did it for her.
So leading up to, I guess, everything that we're about to chat about, talking about the year that you lost your mother, there were signs that were leading up to that incident of her just being completely filled with bliss and so overwhelmed by the women that you guys have become. Do you want to speak to that at all?
You go first.
I think like one of the first things, it was our last trip and that we all took together. It was for her birthday, her 65th birthday. And we were in Mexico, and we were taking a cruise from Cancun over to Isla Mujeres. And we were just out on the open waters, and she looked at both of us and she said, girls, I want you to spread my ashes here. And we were like, Mom, okay.
Yeah.
Like, why are you saying that right now?
Yeah.
And literally within like 5 months, she passed away.
And this was in 2020?
Mm-hmm.
And that was just one of the
things.
many, many, many things that just was what I honestly, I would have to say that all of the things that led up to her passing and the way that she passed just had God written all over it. And that I would have to say that we are really lucky that we got to experience that as a part of loss, because not everybody gets that. But that also is what had me dive really headfirst into God.
And so these are all topics that I want to cover. And first of all, thank you so much for being willing to come on here and share your story. A big reason why I wanted to have you on here is that journey home is all about coming home to ourselves and then ultimately coming home to our Creator. When I think about incredible people, you are two women that come to mind every time. The way that you have navigated the journey of grief, the way that you have navigated the journey of family and sisterhood and motherhood, and coming home to yourselves through such a tragic situation has been so inspiring to me. And the root of this podcast is that we would just get local people together to share these extraordinary stories about the human spirit and their resilience. And so my goal today is that we would utilize each one of your resilience through faith and through your own expression of coming to find yourself and walking through that shadow of grief to maybe help a few listeners that are working through that currently or may walk through that in the future, or may be gripped with fear of ever having to go through that. So if you're okay with it, we do need to pause for a second, but I would love to dive in from that space on our other side. Does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll be right back. So as we were saying, moving into just the power of allowing grief to transform us and allowing us to hold the power of pain and love and transformation and community all in one. I've witnessed the two of you do that. I think we were about to share a few different kind of interesting things that happened in the alignment of the months leading up to the loss of your mother. But I would love to utilize the opportunity of the way that you guys have handled this. And it is something that you will obviously process your entire life as anyone would. But that you would take something so tragic and also be able to find and birth beauty in it. And so in thinking about those conversations and moments leading up, what was the month that she passed?
August.
Okay. Yep. So in leading up to August of 2020, which was already a very turbulent year as is, what were some of those little kind of breadcrumbs that led up to that month that you kind of look back on now and see as like kind of just a way for God to be preparing your hearts?
Well, there was a huge one for me. So when we went to Mexico, it was in February, right before lockdown. When we got back, the whole world locked down.
Yep.
But while we were there and we were leaving, my mom is notorious for forgetting things. And my dad even said to us, make sure she doesn't lose anything or forget anything. And so we get to the airport. She's lost her immigration paperwork.
Oh.
And
So like serious stuff.
Right. Just, you must have it to get on this airplane. And so Kelly is holding the gate. And this is when I was living in California. So I was living in California, and I was going to be taking a different plane than Kelly and my mom, who were flying into Atlanta, and then back here, I think I was flying to Houston. And so Kelly waited at the gate to make sure that they knew we're waiting on one more passenger. And I went with my mom to the immigration desk, and we were, like scurrying over there, trying to get her paperwork. And then when we get back, it felt almost apocalyptic to see only Kelly right there, and the whole gate, all of the seats were empty. Everybody had boarded the plane except for Kelly and my mom. And I will never forget hugging my mom and her turning around and walking away. And my stomach dropped, and I was like, oh my God, they aren't supposed to get on that plane. And I was terrified. So I was like sitting in the airport, and I was like just waiting for Kelly to text me that they had landed in Atlanta. And Kelly texted me, and I was like, oh gosh, they're there. They're fine. Why was I freaking out? That's so crazy of me to have this gut-wrenching feeling. And I was like, everything's fine. Little did I know that was actually going to be the last time that my mom was going to hug me.
Wow. I have not heard that story yet. That's insane. And so that was February.
That was in February, yep. And then she had been like, the whole world's locked down, just come back here to North Carolina. But Kevin was a nurse and working in the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit more hesitant to just fly back to North Carolina when the rest of the world was locked down. But I did plan a trip, and I was like, I've got a trip planned, but I'm not going to tell you when because it's going to be a surprise. And so Kelly and I kept this secret of when I was flying in, and I was packing my bags because I was flying out the very next day when Kelly called me and told me that she had fallen.
So you were literally arriving as the surprise like 2 days after this accident.
Yeah. Or the very next day.
One day.
The very next day, yeah.
Oh, where was your faith at the time, like your relationship with God, your connection to the Holy Spirit? Like, where did you sit with all of that? Even in that moment when you hugged your mother for the last time, like where was your, like the magnitude of your faith at that moment?
Very little. So my first reintroduction back to faith was actually Faith Flow.
Oh, wow.
So I had come back to North Carolina, and Kelly was like, you have got to go to this yoga class with me. And she was like, it's called Faith Flow. And I was like, okay, Kelly. And she was like, no, it's different. I promise you, you're going to love it. She was like, it's going to change the way you see everything. Because I was always very, very resistant to the church. I didn't like it growing up. I think it was because they forced me to read out of the Bible. I would like hide from Sunday school. It wasn't my vibe. I was the only kid in the church who refused to be confirmed, which was a really big deal.
Yeah.
Because it had never happened in like the history of the church apparently. And so I had to have all these meetings, and they were like, well, why? Why not? And I couldn't necessarily put my thumb on it, but I was just like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like something felt wrong to me. And so that was actually my reintroduction to faith. And then really this whole catalyst of events is what brought me back to.
What brought you back? So during the break, we were talking about a text message. And I remember during the lockdown, so basically Kelly and I went through teacher training together, got really close. At first, your mom, I think it was because I was also an instructor and you were becoming an instructor that she was definitely like puffing her chest out like a little bit.
She was
I
like,
remember-
no, jazzercise, not yoga.
Yeah.
Like, you've been training your whole life for this. What are you doing?
Yes. And we went to dinner for your birthday one night, and she was like, kind of like, I could feel the tension.
She was like,
yeah. And I remember looking over and saying like, you know that you're responsible for this studio. I'm the girl that you scared out of doing jazzercise. And it like totally broke the ice. And from the rest of the night, we were like best friends. But I remember through COVID when all of this was happening, because you called me like shortly after you got the news, and we were fervently praying.
Yeah.
And I had just known the context because they had just recently moved to that studio. They didn't. Did they have a stage at the last location?
No, I think it was on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even think. And so anyways, she was there alone because of COVID. There was all these different things that were leading up to it. But I just remember through the lockdown, when you moved back, we were doing classes outside and you guys would just share little tidbits. And one of the tidbits that you shared is this text message that she had sent you or your friend. Do you remember that at all?
Yep, she sent it to both of us in
Okay.
a group message.
Go ahead.
Was this after Mexico?
This was after Mexico,
Okay.
and when she came home, she ranted and raved that this was the best trip of her life.
Wow.
She said, I always knew where the two of you were in like the whole resort because I could hear you cackling, which is definitely true.
Yeah. It's been the whole day too, and I love it. It's the best sounds ever.
And of course, we were all bunking up in one room, and she was snoring, and so Kelly was like throwing a pillow over on her, like, quit snoring. And so in her text message, she said,
Like, put this over your face, Mom. I love you.
she said, I just feel like I have to tell you this, whether I die tomorrow or 10 years from now, how proud I am of you. I feel like I've done my job to see the two of you as sisters, and even giving mothering advice in this message before I had even...
You had children.
Yeah, or thought about even having children. And then at the very end, she said, even if you want to smother me with a pillow.
XO.
Yeah, XOXO mom.
Yeah. That's just so wild. So leading up to the day, you're packing your bags. Basically, what were the series of events from the moment that you heard the news to you getting into town? Like, how did all of that play out?
So I actually got a phone call from this woman named Pat, and she was actually a client of mine as well. So I just answered the phone thinking she wanted to schedule an appointment.
Yeah.
And it was like, Kelly, your mom has fallen off the stage. She hasn't gotten up in 10 minutes. I don't know if she's dead or alive. And at that point, I was pulling out of my driveway and on my way to work.
Okay.
And the Jazzercise studio is probably like 3 or 4 minutes from my house. So
Yeah.
I was like, I'll be right there. I pulled in. I opened the door. The music's blaring. My mom's like on the floor. Her face is like black and blue with like some blood just because she had hit her head so hard. And I rushed to her side and I was like, Mom, are you okay? And she just looked very dazed and confused, but we were talking. She was like, I'm fine. And I turned the music off and we had like a little bit of conversation. I was like, don't get up. Like, I'm going to call the cops or the ambulance. Yeah. And maybe 2 seconds later, they had showed up because the women that were watching her over the Zoom call had called. And so they came and then they were questioning her. She wasn't very coherent with like any of the things they were asking. They loaded her up in the ambulance and I was like, okay, I'm going to come and get in and ride with you.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you can't. It's COVID. And I was like, so what am I supposed to do? And they were just like, you can find her at New Hanover County Hospital.
That's ridiculous.
It was. And so I was like, okay. And I just thought it was one of her run-of-the-mill falls and she was going to be fine and maybe sore. And I was really bummed because Kasey was coming in and we had all these things planned out. And I was like, damn it.
Yep.
Not even knowing the severity of it. And so I get to work and my dad calls me and he's like, we found her. She's in the hospital. She's good. I'm going to go up there. And I was like, okay, great. And then I get back to doing my client and like maybe within 20 minutes, my dad calls me again and he's like, it's not looking good. They just rushed her into emergency surgery. She has a bleed all of her brain. It's not looking good, Kelly. And so I wrapped up. I think I texted you and asked for prayers. And I remember you just telling me, like, Jesus is with her. And I think she was unconscious at that time. But when you said that, I just had such a peace like wash over me. And I knew that was truth. And then when she got out of surgery, she was unconscious from then out for the next week. And then Kasey came in. And I mean, I think it took us 3 days to actually get into the hospital. And only because we like knew somebody in town with some pull. I mean, it was ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
And our visits were very short. We had to have masks on, 30 minutes tops. But at least we did get to be with her and see her.
Yes.
And I remember the very first time we came into her room, she was in a coma, but we all rushed in, and her heart rate jumped up. Her eyes started watering when my dad leaned in and gave her a kiss, and I was like, she's there. I know she's in there. And I don't know if where she was in her process, if she was in the body, out of the body, but she was definitely still there.
Yes.
And then as time went on, we could feel it leaving.
Yep.
It was almost like she needed that last connection with us, that last physical connection with us to truly step out of her body.
And let go.
And just thinking about the reason why I wanted to share this story on the podcast is to have a tangible place that people can go to find hope in these difficult moments. But I just remember, your mother wanted so much for you girls growing up. She wanted you to be women and ladies and successful and to carry yourself in this distinct way, just as she did. She had a meticulousness for keeping a beautiful home, and she had a very high standard for excellence that she wanted to see in both of you. And I think about the tenderness of your dad, and this story just really always gets to me. But I feel like your mom in that last year was so spiritually connected that she could finally loosen the reins because you had become the women that she had wanted you and guided you to become. And I remember after she had passed, I didn't even really know you yet, which is just wild to me. And then I met you and I was like, wait, are you Kelly or is this Kelly? Which one's Kelly? But I remember going over to your house and just it feeling so warm and at home and so clean, like your mom's home. And you said to me, I've gotten this new spark of energy to make my house a home.
Yeah.
And then you had babies of your own, 2 little girls, and I'm so thankful to have known your mother because I see so much of her in each one of you, and now you guys have the opportunity to raise these 2 new beautiful girls. But one thing I did want to share is I met your mom, and she inspired me to go do yoga. And then I met you through teacher training. And then you were absorbed into my family. You girls feel like the sisters I never had. We always say that. And my dad, around the same time that your mother had passed, went and did plant medicine. And he came back, and I remember you just saying his eyes, there was something in his eyes that was speaking to me, that was saying, this is what I need to do. And I remember how brave I thought she was, traveling internationally during a global pandemic, but you knew this is what you were supposed to do. And I remember your connection to my dad. He loves you like a daughter. And when you came back, we were all at Airlie at this perfect party that you had planned. And Kelly was just walking through the field, and it was the sun was on you and your hair was down and you were wearing a similar dress to this, and everything was flowing. And I was like, there's a living goddess in her presence. This is crazy. And I looked in your eyes and I knew I was supposed to go do that journey too.
Yeah.
And I just think about this cyclical rotation of the way that life works, and that domino effect fell, and then you moved back, and now the 3 of us get to know each other, and watching y'all's relationship and these beautiful girls that you've raised, and our paths that just continue to weave, and here we sit now talking about it all. I cannot get over the resilience that each one of you chooses to have. And when we're talking about loss and grief, we lost my 101-year-old papaw, and we got to witness the stages of passing. And one morning he was like picking fruit and like tasting it. And one night, the night before the morning that he passed, he was like literally knocking on a door. My cousin woke up and saw him do that. My cousin didn't necessarily have a relationship with God, and after that he became a believer because shortly after Papa passed. And I think it's so beautiful, as sad as it is to lose somebody like your mother who could still be here with you, watching and witnessing how tender and fragile life is and how she lived those last couple months and choosing to hold on to that, and then watching her legacy live on in the two of you now that she isn't embodied, but her essence is now in 2 houses and 2 babies. Do you guys feel that, like, thinking about life after that circumstance? Of course, grief is ebbing and flowing, but how do you feel after that tragedy? Like, what kind of hope have you developed and transformations have occurred since then?
You first.
I feel like it just gave me such an appreciation for each and every day.
Yeah.
And knowing how they can all change in an instant. So, and I also think you can go this way or you can go this way. You know, everyone's going to pass. You can choose to like mourn it and like think like they're over and it's blackout, or you can choose to believe that they're with our Creator and it's like even better, and to celebrate it just as if it's like a birth.
Yeah.
And even more beautiful.
Wow.
So I chose to go that way, and I was juiced up by it. I was almost like weirdly elated.
Yes.
Like people were like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm really good. And I think that people thought that I was like almost like tricking myself, and I wasn't. I just know that she's so good, and I'm so thankful that I have like that perspective, and I want to pass that on to other people.
Yes. And that's what you've passed on to me. Like, I thought about the way that you guys made me so emotional. I thought about the way that you handled that passing. And then when my papa passed, I was able to offer that to my mom. You know, and his things are adorned all over this house. It's like that essence lives on. You know, it's like when that spirit passes, you realize we are not confined to these bodies. Like, life is so much more.
More. I would have to say the way that she's continued to shine through, and certain things where you're like, Mom, I see you.
Yes.
When you stay open to it, you know?
Yes. Well, we are coming to the exact end of the next segment. It's the perfect end, and I just cannot thank you both enough. I will continue to say this because I just think your story and your resilience is so inspiring. But we still have more to cover, so we're not done quite yet. So I guess coming kind of towards the end, if you were to think about how life was prior to 2020 and all of those transformations that took place, and really thinking about what your mindset was, the way that you approached life, what you thought the purpose of life and your own contribution to life was, and then going through a tragic situation and being faced with one of the most challenging things we can be faced with, which is the loss of a loved one, especially in a circumstance where no one could have ever seen it coming. What now do you feel like you're driven by? And then how have you used your ability to turn that into, as tragic as it is, partially a gift in your own life, in the way that you're raising your 2 girls, and the way that you get to participate in their lives, and the way that you are showing up in your own life?
I guess I can start. I would definitely say that everything that I cared about or that drove my life completely changed and shifted. I flew back to California. I stuck around in Wilmington for a long time after my mom passed away, just because I wanted to be close to family. And when I flew back to California, it was like, I'm not supposed to be here. And so I told Kevin, I was like, we need to move home, which was a complete 180 from where I had been. He had always been kind of the one like, oh, we should work our way back to the East Coast to be close to family. And then this happened, and it was almost like he and I switched roles a little bit. And I just knew that we had to be close to family, and that family was the only thing that mattered, and that everything else in life comes second to your community and people. And so called my girlfriend Julie, and I was like, I need to buy a house in North Carolina now.
Make it happen now.
Yeah. And it was the first day we went looking for houses. I'm like, okay, this is the one.
And that's the one you're in now?
Yep.
That's
It
amazing.
was the quickest process I've ever seen.
It really was. I was like, oh, we found it.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, now I look at life so differently. I know that, like Kelly said, every day is a gift. And that perspective is absolutely everything. And that you can look at all of the things that you've lost, or the could've, would've, should've type things, or you can look at all of the beautiful things that you have, and just be really grateful for all of the wonderful blessings around you. And that's really the space that I try to move from going forward. Of course, it's not always easy, but it's certainly what I try to do.
Yeah, and I think you do it beautifully.
Thank you.
Yes. What about you, Kelly?
Like, how is life better?
Yeah, just what would you say is the way that you're approaching life now as opposed to prior to everything that happened in 2020?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for that experience, because life is so much better after that. It opened my eyes, it opened my heart, it opened my faith. I always had a faith, just like being like the seeker and then the investigator that I am. I've always just kind of been like, where is he? What's this about? And so I've always had like God here, but I had never felt him that deeply, and like seeing how he carried me through such a tragedy, and like witnessing other people who maybe didn't have that go through it, and what a difference my journey through that was and theirs was. And so if anything, it just brought me even closer to him, and my perspective has dramatically changed, and I just know that everything is just as it should be. And that's always something that I kind of battled with. I think I'd be like, but Kasey, why isn't it like this? Or la la la. But
the whys.
I'm so many whys. I was born asking why. And
Yeah.
I mean, I might still do that sometimes, but I just know that there's a greater plan. There's just a plan for everything. Even her death was perfectly planned out, and there's a beauty in all of it.
Yep.
And she's also the kind of person who was very close to God herself. So I feel like there's nothing she would have wanted more than to see both of us fall into that.
Yes.
Or I should say dive into it, because that's really what we've done.
And to know you guys both, it's like crazy to think that ever wasn't the centerpiece. And I know we go through seasons where we're closer and not close and all of those things. But I really feel like that is the fabric of what makes both of you. And I also feel like we're moving into a time now where we cannot basically from a healthy standpoint exist without some level of faith, however you define it. And raising your girls and like thinking about just like this full circle moment, like what are the odds that you would now have two girls, and
oh my gosh,
what has that experience been like for both of you? Because I know Kelly's like been all in about it too.
It's been totally surreal for me, because I found out that I was pregnant with Noe. I think it was really just a few days before my mom's celebration of life. And I didn't tell anybody except Kelly, obviously. Until after, because I didn't want to stress my dad out. He was doing the eulogy, and I didn't want to be like, oh, also, I'm pregnant. So we waited until the day after and told my whole family at the same time. And it was just the timing of even finding that out, and it being only a few short months after she passed away. And going through the experience of motherhood, there were so many times that I remember her saying to us both, when you have children, you'll know why I do this, or just so many of the little nuanced things that she did. I'm like, oh gosh, I know exactly. Yeah, it all makes sense to me. I know exactly why she did what she did, and now I'll probably do a lot of those same things, And then there's also the times where, of course, I fall into, God, I wish I could call my mom. Like, this is so hard. How did she do this? How did she deal with these two crazy little girls?
Who were peeing in the yard. And
oh my God, we were feral little girls.
Yeah, we were.
Which I love. She's probably in the house like, how am I ever going to tame these wild animals? Like, Why don't they just have flowers in their hair and like sit and play with dolls instead? Kelly's like shaving the head.
But I almost think that was like God giving us like the crazy to her, you know, because she was always buttoned up. Like even if you had asked our grandma how my mom was, she was like the perfect child who always had her room clean, who would clean, who would cook, who would do all the things. And she was, you know, the quote unquote perfect child. And then she was handed these two maniac feral children. And I think that was kind of her lesson in life.
Yeah, to let go.
Yeah, it's so epic. What has it been like getting to be an aunt to these two beautiful babies?
Oh, it's absolutely the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Noe's like my little bestie.
Yeah.
They are the same, honestly.
I know. I feel like she's like my child. Kasey and I made a child. Sorry, Kevin. We love you.
Even he, though, he looks at Noe and he's like, Kelly.
When's her birthday?
March 18th.
And when's your mom's birthday?
February 28th.
I remember they were close.
They were. And we kept thinking like, oh, this baby's going to be born on mom's birthday. Yeah. And then my mom's birthday came and went. And we were like, okay, where is this baby?
Was she late?
She was.
Wow.
Both my babies were late.
Yeah.
Wow. When's George's birthday?
October 6th.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, so Libra like you.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
And my mom, I definitely think my mom named Georgia.
Why do you say that?
Kevin and I had been obviously going back and forth on names, and ever since we found out that she was a girl, and we couldn't agree on anything, and so he had his list of names he liked, I had my list of names that I liked, and I came up with all of these grand ideas of how her name would be determined. I was like, well, let's pick a different name for each date, and then whatever date she's born on will be her name. He was like, then we would have to have all of these names, you know? And I was like, okay, well, how about we put all of the names into a hat, and whenever Noe comes to the hospital, she picks the name out of the hat, so that way we can tell Noe that Noe named her.
Yeah.
And he was like, rolling his eyes at all my crazy, wild ideas. He was like, okay, whatever. And the night that she was born, Noe hadn't come to meet her yet. He was like, what do you think of the name Georgia? And I was like, I like it. I was like, let's add it to the hat. And then the next morning, Noe came, and she didn't want to have anything to do with this hat of names that we were like so eager for her to pull from, because there were switches and all kinds of things at the perfect toddler level. And so then she's like, here, and like picked Georgia out of the hat. And so it was almost like it was determined to be that. But then on the way home from the hospital, I called my aunt, my mom's sister, and I told her her name. And she said, how did you come up with that name? And I was like, I don't know. I just like came to Kevin, and then Noe picked it out of the hat. And little did I know that my mom's high school boyfriend's mom, which was also, I guess, considered like a second mom to my mom, somebody who my mom absolutely adored, was Georgia. And so Georgia's name is Georgia Jean, which is my mom's mom, Jean, and her second mom. And
whoa.
And it wasn't even planned like that.
Of course.
Of course.
And these are like you girls are choosing to be open to the flow of life. Like that is what I honor so much about both of you. And you do it in such your own ways. And even as I look at you, it's like you guys are the same, but also vastly different.
Oh, yeah. I feel that all the time.
It's like the yin and the yang, like genuinely. It just feels like you complete each other. Like when you both walked in, it's like this whole moment. And I think that why I was so eager to have you on this podcast is thinking about our alignment. It like works like a tapestry. Like if we were to weave the way that we interconnected in, it would almost turn into like this piece of art. And then we add you into it. And then we add what took place with your mother, but then thinking about the girls, like I feel like we could write a book on just the way that you have allowed life to unfold. And it inspires me so much. And you guys are definitely going to be on this podcast again if you want to be. But I just would hope for anybody listening that you would take so much hope in the way that Kelly and Kasey approach life. And I feel like you move from a space of being spirit-led. Like you're so convicted on things. Like, yes, I'm going to move to California and this is where I live now. And then you come and you're like, and now we're going to Wilmington. And Kelly's like, maybe I'll go to California or maybe I'll go to Peru. And like just kind of flows with it. But when you choose to live in this way, tragedy is going to strike, but so is triumph. and you don't attach yourself to either one. You're like, this is painful, and I'm going to feel that pain and be in that pain, just like you were saying. People are like, are you all right? And you're like, I'm actually amazing. Like, you have a healthy relationship with grief. You have a healthy relationship with loss because you know where your mother is. And you know that she danced till her literal last breath. And that the year that she took her last breath, she also got to see her 2 daughters that she loves more than life itself become the women of her dreams. Like, she completed her assignment and she has moved on. She has passed on to be with her creator. And what she's left in the wake of that is 2 amazing women that are now raising amazing women that are able to share a story that may have just been lost in the life of somebody else that you guys have turned into like a total triumph. Do you feel that?
Definitely.
Are y'all twins?
We're so in sync.
Well, I know, especially being hosted the first time, it can be like a little tough. And I know, like, when we're off air, it feels a little more like loosey-goosey, natural. But is there anything that comes up that you feel like you want to share, or anything that you're like, ooh, I wish we had said that in the moment past, or just literally anything before we?
I guess when I think about, my mom passing, it's not that you don't still have the feelings of, I wish she were here.
Yeah.
Because you do, I mean, they're like every holiday.
Yeah.
Kelly and I are like, wow, her presence was so incredibly strong that it's like a whole pillar of our family has just been like knocked out. And so it's
and
not
no matter
to say,
like what we do, we can just like never feel that or do it like she did, no matter how hard we try.
Yeah. I mean, she was so strong. And so there definitely are moments of, we wish she were here. We wish she could see, my girls, and we wish she could be the grandma. We wish that she, it's really hard. It's not that it's always going to be great, but it's that we choose to be great.
Yes. And how do you do that? How do you think y'all do that?
You just have to lean on God and know that she's in a better place, and that, you also see other people who go through certain lives and they suffer a lot at the end of their life.
Yeah.
And we are really, really blessed that she never truly had to go through like a long suffering period. And,
yes.
And so when you focus on all of the little things that you can be grateful for, it can help overshadow any of the things that you wish she were here for.
Yes.
She also told like so many people that she wanted to die dancing. Like, I literally probably had 20 people tell me, they're like, I don't know if this is too much, but your mom told me that she wanted to die dancing.
Yeah. And like people who did not even know each other from different states came forward and like would
shared
say that
with
to us.
So she got her wish. It was just such a beautiful exit.
It was. It was tragic, but also beautiful.
Yeah. And you've chosen to water the flowers that were planted on the other side of it.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Well, ladies, this was such an honor, and I just love you both so much. And this is just the beginning. Like, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. But I just want to say that I love you, and it was an honor to host you today. And I hope I know your story will help so many. And just thank you for your own resilience and your willingness to bravely walk through grief. It's one of the hardest things that we'll ever do, but as a human, I don't think you get out of this life any other way. So I just appreciate you guys for offering people advice on lived experiences of how to do that so gracefully and graciously. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. Well, that's it for Journey Home, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon.